In an apparent departure from the 1/14 scale buggies and truggies that Rlaarlo have been making recently, they've sent me their first 1/12 scale. This is the AM-X12, and I have some questions. Let's get some answers. Things have changed over the years, and I have in my workshop there some very old STR-8 buggies and a few other little tiny fast brushless models. So that's nothing new, but when the A959 hit the scene 5 or 6 years ago now, it really made a splash because it was so cheap. You didn't have foams, you had a brushed motor, but it was a really low tone motor and it packed a punch. It's kind of old news now. The 144001 followed the A959. If you've been into the hobby for the last few years, you'll be well and truly familiar with the 144001. Now, in the first video that we did for the XDKJ-006, there are a lot of letters and numbers in this video, I had on a table down in the yard there, we had the 144001, we also had the 127018, which was the 144001 but longer. I understand that this thing is a longer wheelbase. The main question I really have is it a 1/12 scale or is it just another 127001? The reason we're doing a bit of a history lesson here is because I want to give you some context, particularly if you're new to Rlaarlo, but even if you're not, as I definitely am not, I found this journey somewhat interesting, and let me show you why. Now, you might remember from my initial review that this is a carbon fiber base as well, and it came with a 2800 milliamp hour 2S battery that copped some damage because the battery tray, see if I can show you this, there's a little kind of nubbin there for this screw underneath. There was one on that side where the battery sits, and this battery, when I did my durability testing, I can still feel the dent in the battery. It came out quite bent. Now, the 006 came with this all-in-one ESC and receiver. It's got the brushless ports there for the bullet connectors, the 2.5mm bullet connectors I think they are. It had a plug for lights and a plug for the fan, and it would take 2S or 3S. The one thing I really didn't like about this was the range was just awful. I didn't complain about it, but I did note it, and I'm pleased to note that Rlaarlo have made some changes, so we'll get to that in a minute. The other thing I wanted to let you know was the 005, which was their Truggy. Now this, do stick with me because this is going somewhere. The Buggy and the Truggy were really similar, however, the Truggy gave you an alloy base, while the Buggy gave you the choice of an alloy, but usually it was a carbon fiber base. The other thing it gave you was a hefty brushed system with another all-in-one receiver. Now, the nice thing about the Rlaarlo electronics from back then was that they still gave you a 3-wire servo instead of the 5-wire stuff that the earlier 959 and friends came with. This wasn't terrible, but compared to the lighter, smaller brushless motor of the 006, sorry, the 005 just was a bit sluggish. Now, recently, I've gone and stuck a 2500 kV brushless system with a 60 amp ESC and its own separate receiver, so now we have the range to handle the speed. One nice thing about the Rlaarlo machines so far is that they've had metal gears throughout, which I really like. So these motors are the same size, but the power and efficiency you get from this brushless thing make it a lot faster. We're going to stick a GPS on all of these today, actually. I'd just like a little bit of context before we crack open the AM-X12. So that will be interesting for context. Let's get these on the road real quick and then we'll come back. Doesn't take long to get up to max, so that's fine. Goes alright. It's really not a bad little buggy, this. Alright, so max speed we had was 64. Now that's on 2S, remember. Now range isn't so much of a problem with this because we've got the antenna going straight out the end there. Bigger tyres means taller gearing, even though the gears are the same. That felt a bit faster, but not a lot faster. And remember also, we're on 2S, not 3S. That'll do. It's not bad, eh? Ha! 64! Exactly the same speed. So it's heavier. Slightly lower voltage. Slightly unfair test, but there you go. Let's just keep this in mind for later. 64k an hour for both the XDKJ-006 in its stock form on 2S and the 005 with its big overpowered brushless system also on 2S. They both got 64k an hour max speed. On 3S it could be a different story. I know from experience 81k an hour. I would expect this to be faster. We can test it today. We might. So, with all that in mind, you know where the 959 came from, the 144001, and in particular, if you remember back to my review, the 127018, which is the long wheelbase. Let's take a look at the AM-X12. I'm going to remember this eventually. It is, I've already remembered it. The AM-X12. Let's take a look at this thing and see what we can see. Anyway. There it is. So the very first thing I see is a different radio system. You might notice I've got a couple of radios sitting back here. There's a little cheeky. I saw the photos and it reminded me, the design reminded me of the Dumbo RC stuff. That's the RGT. Here's the original Dumbo RC. We'll see. I actually don't know anything about this yet. Dip switches, which often give you a bunch of interesting features. I've found this in the FMS crawlers recently. That's cool. We're going to get to that. Battery wise, is it 3 AA's? I hope it not, but it probably is. Oh, it's 4. Good. Hey, Rlaarlo stickers. I like stickers. Not your little bothers RC. One thing that was nice with the 006 and the 005, which are now named differently, is they came with a bunch of spares, which I really appreciated. This appears to be the same. Now, as with the 006 and the 005, it does come with a front shock absorbing lip, or, well, it's not really a diffuser. I actually used one of them and cut it untidily with a blunt knife for the 001, the 144001. That was to help the front there. I need to shape it properly. It's nice that it comes with that. We're not gonna need it. What else do we have here? Ooh, different pinion. This looks to be mod 7. Let me tell you, this is one of the things I wanted to answer, and if you're thinking about this buggy, it's worth considering. The gearing on all these cars is mod 7, or mod 0.7, which is an unusual gear. Mod 8 is kind of common, mod 1 obviously very common. Getting the right pitch gears so that you get mesh is really important. I've been unable to gear this thing up to go faster, so I've got to go up in kV, which is revs per volt, let's say. It's nice to see that there's a spare pinion included here. This comes with, it's a 1 amp USB charger. The 006 came with 2 amp charger, which was nice. So we've taken a step back as far as balance chargers go. It's going to be slower. We've got an alloy spare bulkhead, 4 spare arms, 4 spare pins, and they're captured pins. There's a lock nut on the other end, so it stops the metal, the plastic kind of flexing. Go and check out my durability montage for this thing if you haven't seen it, because these are all the same. So the arms are actually quite tough. I spanked the snot out of this thing on a skate park just to see what it was like. Haven't done it with the heavier, now faster 005, but this thing was tough, unbelievably tough. Now this is the same hardware, almost same everything actually. The tyres are better for carpet and hard surfaces. They're closer to a pin tyre, so there's a bit more body in these tyres. The shocks are the same, they're just a different colour. I see carbon fibre front and rear bulkheads. There's 1 spare alloy bulkhead. This thing came with the same, I'm pretty sure, and they just invert them front and rear. I also see sway bars here. I don't think this came with that. No, it didn't. We do have a spot for the sway bars here, so you could actually buy them for the older 006 and probably even the Truggys. This will give you better cornering. They're over tightened though. The sway bar is supposed to move. It's supposed to pick this up a little bit. I'm not saying you need the sway bar, but if you want the sway bar, you'll need to do what I'm about to do. It also comes with droop screws. What are droop screws? There's a spot, let me see here. There's a hole just in here where you put the screw in from the top and it presses down. That's what these little shoulder shapes are for. So as you screw the screw down, usually they're grub screws, but they've given us full-size screws here. It'll tuck the vehicle down so you can actually give it droop. So it can't actually extend that far. You can stop it from going that far. That is one of the things I've done on this thing, which is why this looks flatter than that. I've actually put droop screws in this fella to make him flatter. You want the thing to sit flatter when you're going for high speed. Now going straight line, going around a track, you actually probably want the travel. And we're going to go down to my dirt track shortly to give this thing a blast after we do a road test. And we'll see how that goes. So we need to loosen these screws a little bit to get the arms to work properly. These are apparently oil filled, but there's air in the first third of 2 of them. This is supposed to be lovely and smooth all the way, but there's... Okay, so tuning needs a little bit of work, but that's okay. I'm not a racer, I'm just picking it apart based on experience. What do we got here? So it's not really stuck down, but that's no big deal. It's a different ESC. It looks really similar, but it is different. There's a power button there and the 3-wire X6F. Who makes the X6F receiver? I'll tell you who makes it. That's a Dumbo RC system. We can probably bind this to this. We probably can. But we also probably don't need to. The range on these things is known to be pretty good, and I imagine this will be the same. I'm not the only YouTuber. You'll have heard of Kev Talbot. He's a big fan of these, and for good reason. They're good and reliable. My personal favorite is the GT5 radio. It's a 6-channel. They're more expensive than the Dumbos, and they actually have a 20 model memory, but you can configure them per model. This thing, when you bind it, there's no memory. You can bind an unlimited number, but you got to trim it every time. So pros and cons for each. It's a 3200 kV motor. That puts it in middle range. I've got a 4500 in that thing, and my aim is to get that to 131k an hour. This thing's running a 2500. Lower kV means lower speed, lower heat, lower battery consumption. 3000 to 4000 for something this size is probably bang on perfect, honestly. I also see that they've got heavier grease, or more of it, in the diffs. They don't spin like they used to. I haven't dressed these up yet, so this will show you what I'm talking about. It just spins for days, right? Now after you add grease, which I've done in this, I didn't do the front, I did the back. It slows it down a bit, and that's the same on this. So that's actually what you want to see. As far as the rest of it goes, it's the same plastic. They've got the metal in the middle there with the dog bone between them. We should add some oil to this back shock. I'm not going to today, but the only thing really you want to do is loosen these sway bars, these 2 screws on the front here, so that this bar can bend a little, so it can move as the suspension works. Because when this goes up, this should be pulled up a little. And when you don't see that happening, it's not actually doing its job. It's Hex hardware. And this was Phillips head, same as the 001. Okay, so I opened this video with a question. I didn't say what the question was, I said I have questions. My first and most pressing question is now answered. Is this a 14 scale when the 12 scale when the others were 14? Well, no, it's the same scale as the others. But so what makes this bigger is the bigger wheelbase. My other question was, what have they learnt from the 006, from the previous series of buggies? So Rlaarlo has learnt a few things. The radio is sorted, which is brilliant. The diffs are more heavily greased, which takes some pressure off you from when you get yours. The tyres are firmer with a better tread on them. Another thing I notice is we'll come back to the wing in a sec, is there's an adjustable mount here for the motor, so you can change pinion sizes. There's 17, 21 and 27 tooth pinions available for the 144001, on which all this stuff seems to be loosely based. And I do wonder whether there's the 21 or the 27 fitted. My feeling is it'll be the 27, because for the horde of YouTubers that are going to be looking at this thing, like me, hello, will be reporting on its top speed, but top speed isn't everything. I could have gone with a higher kV motor in this thing, but I chose 2500 because it's a fun speed. You go higher, you go faster, but it also means more heat and worse acceleration off the mark, particularly if it's overgeared. So it's always a question of balance. That goes for anything where you're trying to apply physics, you're trying to move it. This is quite an attractive body. They asked me what colour I wanted and I said surprise me. Wasn't fussed, because I think they both look great. Now, we needed to loosen these screws, which are also Allen's, so hex heads, so we're going to just roll them back a shade. There you go. Okay, that's better. So it's allowed to move now. See how it picks up the other side? Right near the end of the cycle, see how it picks it up? This could be a stiffer bar for what it's trying to achieve. So these will be about as soft as you'd ever want with sway bars. We're just going to tighten it back up a shade now. The other thing you want to do when you're setting up is just to tighten your wheels. Mine all came loose on the 006 when I tested it. If you were running on a tight track, I'm pretty sure this is 17, that'd be the pinion to use. This fella here, that screw, I think should be removed because it's bad for the batteries, so we're going to actually pop that out. This is the other thing you should do when you're setting this thing up. Get rid of that screw. There we go. Flatter. Let's just check the manual. I want to know what these dip switches do. Ooh, nice manual. Exploded parts. There are foam inserts. Look at that. Well, there you go. 2, 3, 4 and 5. They're steering reverse, throttle reverse, reverse switch for channel 3, reverse switch for channel 4. And there's channel 3 and 4. And I don't think, yeah, we're not. So we're only using 2 channels. So the dip switch is purely to reverse the channels. And channel 1 has been reversed, and that's your steering, always your steering. This turns on the same way as the other ones. What was that? Something just fell out. That doesn't sound right, does it? I saw the motor had been moved all the way out on the mount. It just doesn't sound right. So we're just going to take a quick look. Alright, back together. There's a bit of stuff around, but it's worth it to get it set up. Okay, radio's on. Yeah, she's geared really high. So if you're going to drive this on a track, stick the other pinion in it. We're just going to set the endpoint on this thing, which is your dual rate, they usually call it. We have a fully charged 2800 milliamp hour battery, freshly removed plastic from the cover, and unlike the 005 here, I didn't have to stick any stickers on. It comes already pre-adorned, which is lovely. So, I think the first thing we might do is get this thing onto the road. Really, to do this, see how fast it is, we want to adjust these turnbuckles to tow it in. You want straight all around. But we won't worry because we're going to hit the track soon. Okay, peak speed, record. Let's do it. All right. quite stable and not fast. It's geared quite high, but it's a very slow system. We got 41 kilometers an hour. Right, we've just stuck the 3S battery in, and I thought before we jumped back on the track we might just get a feel for speed. Make sure this is on. I expect we're going to get about 55 out of it, maybe 54. Oh, it's much better on 3S. I left it at top speed longer than it needed to be, just to give that GPS a chance to register. And also because I want to talk about heat. Yeah, there you go, I said 55, that's what we got, 55. All right, with 41k an hour, now here's full speed from zero. It's got a bit of poke, but it's got a kind of a slow response. Grips quite well on dirt, flies nicely, it's well balanced, steers well as you'd expect with that broad toe out. I don't know that the sway bars are doing much. In fact, I know they're not. You wouldn't want this with an alloy base. Carbon fiber seems pretty good, because it's light enough and nicely balanced that even when things go a bit wrong, you can recover it with throttle or steering, which is good. Now my course needs a rake. It's actually kind of on the messy side at the moment, but it's not bad. It's challenging for smaller wheels like this, but Buggy takes it, and you'll see it flies quite well over this little jump. Just a little jump, but I mean, that was about as off kilter as I could make it. Didn't hit straight, and that time I hit it full throttle, so there was nothing else I could do. I rather think this thing would benefit from 3S and a smaller pinion. Now, one Achilles heel of these little buggies, yeah, look at that, flies well, is that the mod 0.7 gearing they use is really not well supported by the aftermarket. There are 3 pinions I'm aware of, 17, 21 and 27. I'm almost completely sure that's all you can get for these. Oops, I was watching real cars. Now that limits what you can do here. It's a 3200 kV motor, which means it's actually, even though I'm pinned most of the time here, that tells you, even with a full battery, that the motor has a lot more to give. This, I haven't counted it, but it looks to be the 27 tooth pinion. It would be tempting to put this on 3S and pop the, it came with a 17, but I want to pop the 21 on there, I think, which I don't own. So I guess the next thing we should do really is pop the 3S battery in it. Let's do that. Now we've just stuck the 3S battery in, and we got 55 out of it. That's 55 kilometers an hour, not miles. And we got 41 out of a full 2S battery. When I pulled the 2S battery out, things were already pretty warm just from the few laps we did here. Now I've just done a long few passes up and down the road, like 3 of them. Things aren't too bad. I think where this machine's going to struggle on 3S is start, stop, start, stop. So corner, accelerate, and down again. This is a 700 milliamp hour battery. So it weighs a lot less than the 2.8 amp one it came with, the 2S. And that's reflected in its better handling. It's a lot easier to turn, and it's easier to control in the air. But I think the 27 tooth pinion is too many teeth for this setup. Even though the kilovolts, well not kilovolts, even though the kV rating on this motor, 32, is nice and low, use the lower speed pinion if you're going to bash with this thing. On a track for short races, this, look at that, lands on its feet every time. I think this bigger pinion will be alright in races that are, you know, 4 or 5 minutes long. Every time it lands on its wheels. That is impressive. Wow. 700 milliamp hour to 1 amp, 3S, I think is probably where it's at for this. You can get hold of the 21 tooth pinion. That would be the way to go too. Pardon me. Wow, that was really tough on it. I like this for the most part. It's more stable, given it's a longer wheelbase version of the 006. Just from the driving you've seen on camera, 2 minutes of it, the motor is burning hot. ESC still hasn't stuck down. It just came like that. It needs to be cleaned and reapplied. Make sure you gear down to the smaller pinion if you're going to run this on 3S regularly. Little battery on 3S is one of the keys to better performance on this. Getting oil in the shocks would be helpful. The foam in the tyres is appreciated. This is a longer wheelbase version of the XDKJ-006, but it'll respond well to different gearing, I think. We know from the top speed runs here, 41 km/h on 2S and 55 on 3S. It's not a speed demon. It's not like the 006, which was pulling out 81 km/h on 3S, and I think 65 on 2S. The 006 on 2S is faster than this thing. And the motor didn't quite get as hot either, which is somewhat confusing. Really noisy. I'm going to pull this apart later on. If I discover anything different, I'll let you know in a follow-up video. Should you buy the AM-X12 or should you stick with the 006? The longer wheelbase you get is nice for stability. If you want to upgrade your 006, you'd need the bigger base, these sides, and this top plate, and the center shaft. And then you'd be ready to go. They are nicely modular. That's a plus. It's not bad. It has its shortcomings. It's got a confusing combination of gearing and motor KV rating, but the tires are great. I like the tires. I like the inclusion of the sway bar, even though it doesn't actually do a heck of a lot. It binds and it's a little bit on the thin side. That's one thing to address, perhaps. It was lifting a wheel on the road, I noticed. I don't know how well that footage will come out, but I've enjoyed playing with it this morning, and I think I will continue to play with it. We might use it as a basis for a speed run at a future time, because my 144-001 could use a longer wheelbase for stability. And we've got all the parts, they are interchangeable, so I may do that as I reach for the fastest speed I can with what I'm running. I love the wing on this thing, I love the included bits. The Dumbo RC radio is a real winner, and I like that the new body has plenty of room. I like that we have an adjustable motor mount. I like that we have a separate receiver. There is a lot to like about this little buggy. Is it for you? I don't know. Make sure you check the description, because Rlaarlo have given me a list of different prices and timings. They've got a pre-sale special that I think we still have a few days left of, where you can get this thing for considerably less money than what they're offering it for later on. But regardless, it's not a bad deal. I know we haven't gone hugely into depth in the gears and the little bits and pieces, but they are the same as the other ones. And if you look at my other Rlaarlo buggy, the 006, you'll see more detail about that. I like what Rlaarlo is doing, or Amarillo, which is their other name. They've got 3, I think. I like the inclusions. I like that they're improving over time, and I look forward to seeing what they do next. Guys, thanks for joining me. Throw me a like if you found this useful. My thanks to Rlaarlo for supplying this for a review and an inspection, even with my provision, which is always the case, that I'll be honest, I'm not just going to plug it. So you're getting the full warts and all view of this thing today. There is a lot to like. There's some stuff I'm not too sure about, but on the whole, I'm glad to have it, and I will play with it some more. I'll catch you next time on RC-TNT, and I thank you again for watching. Cheers, guys. You didn't think I'd finish this video without testing this on 3S, did you? All my batteries are flat, so we're using the phone. This is the 005 with my 2500 kV motor on 12 volts, which I have never run on GPS before. I'm driving with one hand here. I didn't get to full speed, unfortunately, and we're upside down. Alright, I had to put it down so I could drive with two hands. 78 kilometers an hour, 2500 thing on 3S. That's not bad, eh? Catch you next time, guys.